Why do I stand up here? Anybody?
To feel taller.
No. Thank you for playing, Mr. Dalton. I stand upon my desk to remind myself that we must constantly look at things in a different way. You don't believe me? Come see for yourselves. Come on. Come on. Just when you think you know something, you have to look at it in another way. Even though it may seem silly or wrong, you must try. Now, when you read, don't just consider what the author thinks. Consider what you think. Boys, you must strive to find your own voice. Because the longer you wait to begin, the less likely you are to find it at all. Thoreau said most men lead lives of quiet desperation. Don't be resigned to that. Break out. Don't just walk off the edge like lemmings. Look around you.
Welcome to Successful Dropout. This podcast is for the outliers, the innovators, the rebels, those that dare to dream and act on their dreams. I'm your host, Kylan Ginger. Join me as we find out what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. What is up, Successful Dropouts? Get stoked because today on the show we have Anthony Zhang. Anthony is 21 years old and he is the co-founder and CEO of EnvoyNow, a student-only for delivery app on college campuses. He dropped out in the beginning of 2016 in the middle of his junior year at University of Southern California. Today, EnvoyNow is in 15 markets and employs over 1,000 college students nationwide. Wow. So Anthony, that's the intro I have for you, man, but tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Awesome. Great to be on here, Kylan. Thank you for inviting me. I think it's just really been exciting. Starting this since I was 18 years old, just as an idea in my freshman year dorm room, and really being able to, have a lot of great mentors and have a lot of great people in place to help me build this dream and take it as far as it's come today.
And I understand that you just received the Teal Fellowship. Is that true?
Yes. So that was a big part of why I dropped out at the time that I did, and definitely made the conversation with my parents a little bit easier when I told them I wanted to drop out.
You're like, okay, mom and dad, I've got some solid income for a couple of years here now, and good. I mean, I think they connect you with a big group of mentors, and obviously the other recipients of the fellowship and stuff like that too, right?
Yeah, it's been pretty phenomenal because just kind of getting tapped into that network and having, a lot of people that are your age going through the exact same thing, you're really able to lean on each other and, really go past the superficial, like, hey, like, how's your startup going? It's going great. How's yours? It's great. And really kind of getting to dig into, what's going wrong on a day-to-day basis and really be able to connect on that level.
Right. Okay. So tell me about EnvoyNow. What is it exactly you guys do?
Yeah, so we employ only college students on campus and are able to deliver food from local restaurants and be able to deliver them at a level of access and convenience that the other people can't. Namely because we have that student ID access to be able to go not just to the front door, but to the fourth floor of the library to that exact study room, or, have the ID access to go to the seventh floor of your dorm room right there. So we're able to save students time, we're able to give them convenience and really come in clutch during final season, which we're kind of finding now.
So then, when you say 15 different markets, is that like 15 different colleges, universities, basically?
Yes. So college campuses, we deliver on campus and just kind of surrounding student housing area.
Okay. So before you won the Teal Fellowship, were you thinking of dropping out, or was that kind of the catalyst to the decision there?
I definitely kind of thought about it because once we kind of expanded to a campus that wasn't USC, it started becoming bigger. It started taking a lot of my time, and I found myself not really going to classes anymore. And if I did, really just kind of being on my laptop and working on my business. And I just kind of found that, being in a business operations class, learning about some Harvard case study, whereas I was actually working on the own operations of my own business, it just made a lot more sense for me to start considering working full time and getting the learning there.
Right. So what year in college did you start the business then?
I'd say the idea came
Or yeah,
in the
tell me about how
beginning.
the idea came about. I'm curious
Yeah,
about
so
that.
it was freshman year, just with my roommate. We were cramming for finals, and got hungry, so decided to order delivery. With most of the dining halls being closed at that time of night, I think we ordered Grubhub or Postmates, and after about 45 minutes, the guy was like, "Hey, I'm down there." Ended up spending another 15, 20 minutes directing him to the right dorm. He couldn't really find the right place, and then I realized, this pretty much defeats the point of delivery. Could have gotten myself quicker, and at that point, it kind of clicked with me that if I had another college student or a friend bring it to me, it would have been much more quicker, it would have been much more convenient, and would have been able to make some extra money too. So we started it as just a little social experiment in our dorm room. I had people call my personal number. I would just be doing like burrito runs or pizza runs for my friends, and they would just Venmo me a couple extra bucks. And then it pretty much spread to the point where a bunch of random numbers from other dorms and other classrooms started texting my personal number. It was just kind of blowing up my phone, and I realized, hey, this could be a cool money-making opportunity for other college students that are looking for something maybe a little more part-time, not as rigorous or scheduled as like an official campus job. So that's kind of how the idea was born, and that student-driven model was also started.
And so now you employ about 1,000 of those students.
Yeah, so they basically can sign up, do deliveries whenever they want. It could even be, for a couple hours a night, or they could just, say like, hey, I've got just 30 minutes to spare. I'm going to go to Chipotle anyways. Let's turn on the app and see who else I can bring in a delivery for and make a few extra bucks on the side.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's a classic story of discovering a need to be filled and building a business around it by just paying attention to what the challenges that you had to go through. And for anybody listening, man, pay attention. I mean, just think about the stuff that you have an issue with on a daily basis, or the problems you run into on a daily basis. What are the solutions for those? Can you create the solution like Anthony did, and possibly a business from that? So Anthony, what did your parents think about this? Tell me about that conversation, because that's a tough one, I know.
Absolutely. So are you saying like right when I started the business, or when I was like, hey, mom and dad, I'm not going to be going to school next semester?
Let's do both. What were they like when are they entrepreneurs themselves, or?
My parents, I feel like they always kind of had an entrepreneurial streak in them, but since, they immigrated from China, went to college, and were really just kind of, I think their lives more about like building the opportunity so that me and my brother could possibly have the chance of building our own business. But I'd say in terms of the first idea, they thought it was pretty cool. Like, oh, cool. Like, you're just being a little like a delivery boy on campus. That's a cool way to make some extra money. And I think as we grew to more campuses, and as we were able to kind of really, really gain traction, and seeing the response that our customers and that schools were giving to us, they began to kind of see the need, like, hey, I guess when we were back at college, we really need something like this. And when they were telling their friends, that's kind of the recurring theme we got. It's like, man, I wish we had this back when we were in college. So I think they saw that we were filling a clear need, and that I was really enjoying it, and I was really learning a lot from it and developing as a young adult. And they kind of threw their full support behind me at that point.
Okay. And then how about after you won the Teal Fellowship and decided to drop out? How'd that conversation go?
Yeah, so I, let's see, because with the Teal Fellowship, you kind of go through like a few rounds of interviews. I actually didn't tell my parents that I was doing that or flying to San Francisco and meeting the team there until I'd actually gotten that welcome to the Teal Fellowship call. So I was like, hey, smart. Mom and Dad, have you heard of the Teal Fellowship? I didn't even know if they were even knew about it, so I wanted to kind of prep them a little bit, have them do their homework a bit before really dropping that bit of news on them. So I would just send them some articles here and there and be like, hey, I met this really cool guy. He did the Teal Fellowship. Look at all the amazing and inspiring things he was able to do after that. So once I had them kind of warmed up to the idea, I told them, like, what do you think if I got it? They'd be, oh, that'd be great, honey, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, well, I got it, and I'm thinking about taking it. And at that point, they were
Nice
like,
one.
okay, they were pretty open to it at that point, because, pretty much put in a couple months of groundwork beforehand.
Yeah, no kidding. So now that we're getting on almost a year later since you've dropped out, obviously the business has grown. Where do you see it going in the future? What's kind of the future vision for it?
I mean, at this point, there are so many college campuses and so many motivated students reaching out to us, every week, every day,
Really?
just being like, hey, this is such a great idea. I had this myself. I'd love to be a part of it when you expand to X university or Y university. So I think that as long as there are college students who are there and are there to kind of help us pave the way for our growth, we want to just keep getting there and get to every single college in America.
Yeah. Now, do you think you'll ever go back to finish your degree? And if so or not, why?
I'd say at the rate things are going now, probably not. I definitely would say that this experience starting a company and going through all of the trials and tribulations and being able to grow and meet so many phenomenal people along the way and expand the team, that's been the most valuable education in my life thus far.
Yeah. How big is your team of kind of full-time staff running the show?
We're actually very small in terms of full-time, so it's just 4 of us, but since we operate on, pretty much a student-only model, we've got a ton of students who are, treating this as their main thing other than school. And we got a few on each campus, and obviously a lot of students who are driving for us and delivering for us on a daily basis.
Okay. Yeah, that's neat. So you're it's their part-time job that's paying for college, and they're studying while they're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned trials and tribulations and stuff. Tell me about what you'd consider to be your worst entrepreneurial experience building this company to date.
Gotcha. I'd say, probably go through a few of those scares every single week, but I think probably one of my worst moments was having to let a close friend go in terms of working for me. So, I mean, with starting a business in college, working with college students, it was natural for me to gravitate towards friends and friends of friends when kind of growing that business. And a lot of times, college students, you don't have the commitment, or you don't have, things show up, you have finals and other stuff. So with that kind of reliability and uncertainty that comes with being in college, a lot of times, an entrepreneurial thing that requires you to say, like, have 8 or 10 hours outside of school really doesn't work out. So me being, the same age as the people that I'm working with and having to fire a close friend or let them know, hey, this isn't working out, this is why, or be like, hey, you really got to step your game up. I thought, the first time I let someone go, I felt absolutely terrible because, we'd kind of talked about it so much. We're very excited. And, my friend really didn't know that he was doing wrong, or that he wasn't doing as much as was expected. And I'd say with letting friends go or letting any employee go, I don't think it gets much easier after that. You just really got to bite the bullet and let them know quickly.
Yeah, that can be a tough one. I've had to do that a couple times myself, and even employees that we've hired that we've had to let go that became friends through the process of being an employee. And that obviously that never gets easier. You're right. Do you have issues sometimes with like deliveries and customer service issues? Do you have like a customer service hotline that people call and stuff like that? And
oh, absolutely. I mean, with a delivery service like this, we're doing thousands of deliveries a week. There are definitely quite a few that go wrong. It could be from the restaurant running out of the right item to, even just the envoy picking up the wrong food. And I'm sure, as you know, like, customers get really emotional when they're hungry and angry and waiting. So we have kind of a full fleet of dedicated customer success people. And the great thing is they're all students as well. So they are able to really connect with their customers and talk to them on more of like a peer level basis. And usually it gets resolved pretty well because they realize that, hey, I'm talking to someone like me, someone understands my situation. It's not some outsourced customer support in some other part of the world that doesn't really understand where I am,
Oh yeah, totally, man. I mean, they can
and I'm sure
speak the
had that
lingo.
experience.
Like, hey, bro, take a chill pill, man.
Exactly.
We'll get you your pizza. What's just out of curiosity, can you just kind of briefly go over I'm curious about the structure of the business. I mean, do the students that do the deliveries get paid a kind of a commission, or is it an hourly wage, or how does that work?
So with the food ordering experience, it's through a mobile app. So we're only on Android and iOS, and the customer pays a delivery fee, and then the driver gets that delivery fee plus any sort of tip that the customer has. And then where we make our money as a company is through our restaurant relationships, because we're like, hey, we are an only student delivery workforce. We can tap into this marketing channel that probably 80 or 90% of your revenue comes from as a restaurant in the college town. Let us do your deliveries. We'll help you make a ton more revenue. So we do a rev share with them, as well as a couple other packages for, basically being their marketing engine and connection to the college campus.
Okay, gotcha. Now, I asked you about your worst entrepreneurial moment. Tell me about a lesson you've learned, though, more like an aha moment, where at the point where you learned it, something just clicked, and from then on, your thinking changed. You just kind of saw things in a different way.
Mm-hmm. I'd say probably the moment that we became full-time, it was definitely a big kind of shift for us, because we realized, wow, we have all this extra time to be able to work on our business. And we were able to kind of structure our business to work, not just with us being full-time, but being able to have that grow and have other college students be able to manage their time well. Because as I mentioned earlier, it was a big problem with having college students be a little bit more unreliable. And then I think that was a big moment for us in terms of realizing how to better manage our time once we were able to fully capture that.
Yeah. Now, Anthony, you can say you have the experience now of, I would call it, building a successful company, and obviously you'll keep growing. There's still a lot of growth to happen, but for people listening, I'm sure there's other people who are probably at a stage maybe you were at a couple years back, where they might want to start a business. They're still going to college, but they're really interested in that entrepreneurial direction. They feel that, just earning a degree, earning a piece of paper, and getting a job somewhere isn't necessarily the path they want to take. Based on your experience, what advice would you have for somebody on how to come up with a business idea, and let's say how to come up with a business idea and just start testing it while you're still in college?
Absolutely. I would say that being in college and starting this business, that was probably the best thing I could have done for my business, because, you're there in terms of, especially building an early product. The most important thing is getting it into the hands of potential customers. And, you're in a college dorm, you look around you, there's already 100 potential customers within 30 feet of you. So I think, A, in that place, it's very easy to get a lot of rapid feedback. And B, it's very, since you're all peers, it's very easy for them to give you real feedback. I can tell you that, if you're out of the college environment and, desperately buying coffees for strangers who want to try your app, that's a way to do it, but it's a lot easier to have friends and peers that you can get feedback from. And I think in terms of just the resources that most colleges offer you these days, there's always professors who have started their own business that are eager and want to mentor students. There's so many free resources for students in terms of, seed competitions, pitch competitions, grant money. In terms of like incorporating a company or getting legal advice, I would literally just camp out near the law library and just grab a law student who was like, hey, can I just like buy you some food and ask you a few questions for a moment. So I feel like everything was just right there in that one ecosystem. And that was awesome for me, just starting a business and not knowing much about it, being able to talk to as many knowledgeable people as possible.
Based on your experience, what do you think is more important, or what's a route that you would say? Which route would you say is best? Building something and then presenting it to people, or finding people and then building something for them? I guess the other way to put it is, does the product come before the market, or the market before the product, in your opinion?
That's a great question. I would say it definitely varies case by case, but I would say, build a product that's at least usable. For me, I had this, vision for a food delivery app with like fancy routing algorithms and all of that. But, in the beginning, it started as just a poster with my phone number and my Venmo username. So building something that people can use. And then when you have the money to make it better or refine it, especially if you're not very technical, I think is a good way to get it started. But if you're building something that needs that level of refinement to even be accepted by the market, say something more in terms of building like a hardware product or building some sort of medical device, I'd say you would want to test that market beforehand and do a little more research before you pour in so much money into research and development. Yeah.
But it sounds like what you did is you built, what we on the show would call a minimum viable product, which is just, first of all, you had a need that you needed fulfilled just for yourself. But literally just posting your phone number in there and saying, hey, I'll deliver stuff, to your room. I don't know how much, more simple you can get. And it sounded like that worked out really well, just in terms of you were actually able to work in the field, of your, what would be your business at the time, get a ton of customer feedback. And then that kind of, I bet you that helped you build the organization you have now based on all that feedback you got in the early days, huh?
Absolutely. And I'd say like even before I, put my phone number up there, I would just hear from students time and time again, like, hey, I would pay someone $10 to even get my delivery person downstairs, so there was already that need that kind of was like permeating through the halls, and like, oh man, I have to pause playing 2K to go find this delivery guy. Like, it was almost like, just kind of a recurring thing that we'd hear almost every night in the dorms.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And out of curiosity, man, if you hadn't gotten the Teal Fellowship, because I know one of the kind of requirements is that you need to drop out. And that's kind of the point of the whole program. But if you hadn't gotten it, would you have still dropped out, you think? Or would have tried to finish your degree?
I think that I probably would have at least just taken a leave of absence for a semester, because, when you're building a startup, and especially if you're building something that requires outside venture funding, investors are not going to invest in a student. They want you to be fully committed to it. And, going through that fundraising process, having recently dropped out, you're able to reaffirm to people that, hey, this is going to be my life now. I'm not going to be looking back, and, believe in me. So I definitely think that either way for me, it was going to happen.
Yeah. Now, if you could time travel back to day one of your journey and have 10 minutes with your former self to communicate any lessons you've acquired with the intention of saving yourself mistakes and heartache, what would you tell yourself?
Ooh, man. I'd probably sit myself there and talk to myself for a few days with all the mistakes I've gone through. But I'd say a couple big ones is really stay positive. There's so many moments where I'd, wake up to a bunch of phone calls, or like some small thing would be going wrong with a business, and I'd freak out, drop everything I was doing. I would be, at a party or at dinner with my girlfriend, and just like totally just go back to be absorbed in my business. But looking back, like in the long run, in the big picture of things, like that's not a make or break moment for your business. And I would just tell myself to enjoy life and enjoy the moment, and that kind of personal time I'm taking off a little bit more, because now that I've kind of gone through it in a couple of years, like having that work-life balance is super, super important to not getting burned out in the future.
Are you more of a thinker, kind of an internal person, if that makes sense? I mean, do you just kind of think and analyze? Or do you have a tendency to overanalyze something, I guess, is the question?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd say when that gets the worst for me is like when I'm about like, hey, I have a cool idea for my business, or like this is a new thing I should implement, and then it'll just kind of like grow and like permeate and fester, and like I'll realize I've spent like 3 hours in my bed trying to fall asleep, but end up going through like a million different ways to do one thing where I, in reality should have just gotten up and done it, or written it down in a notebook.
Right. Yeah. Now, kind of moving more into the lightning round here. Do you get 8 hours of sleep?
I'd say, yeah, I'd probably get a little bit more now. I've been pretty good about kind of keeping my, I guess, like sleep schedule and work schedule better, because I realize, if I'm exhausted from, an all-nighter, I won't be productive the next day. I have things to do, and for me, like sleep is super important. And, eating healthy and eating right.
Yeah.
I've learned to take care of myself a little bit better as well.
Do you have kind of daily rituals, habits that you do every day? Or is it kind of different day to day?
Yeah, I'm really not too regimented of a person, but I'd say a habit that I have been picking up is kind of going back to the thinking too much at night thing. I'll immediately just roll out of bed, just write down all the thoughts I have on a piece of notebook paper, and then just forget about it and sleep. And a lot of times I won't even turn on the light. I'll just like scribble in my notebook at night, and I'll wake up the next day and be like, what was that thing I was writing? I can't even tell what it was.
Scribblings of a madman.
Yeah, but I think that really helps in terms of just like, getting the right amount of sleep, getting good quality sleep, and being able to kind of tackle and deal with those kind of, overthinking problems that I have, and save it for a time when I'm in a better state of mind to think about it.
Are you a long-term planner? Like when you set goals, do you set like monthly, yearly, 5-year goals? Are you thinking usually that far ahead and setting goals that far ahead, or do you only maybe think of as far ahead as maybe 3 to 6 months?
Mm-hmm. I mean, for kind of growth in our company, we do weekly goals just because, a semester is very short and we want to capture on like all the excitement possible. But we do kind of like 6-month goals and 1-year goals. Just kind of, being at a whiteboard, pick a point and be like, hey, this is where I want to be in 12 months. And then just kind of working back, like, this is how we're going to get there. And like, a lot of times we don't even know how before we set the goal, but, being, I think, goal oriented like that, you find ways and you are able to be creative in making that goal happen.
Do you personally do that as well?
I'd say I have like kind of small goals in my notebook every day that I set in my iPhone, and I'll check them at night. And I'd say in that kind of respect, I'm more of kind of a micro goal type of guy. Yeah.
And I just find that kind of interesting because I've interviewed a few people now and listened to a few interviews. It seems like the trend, maybe not the trend, but the necessity is leaning more towards now setting shorter term goals. I don't know if it has to do with things like technology or just the age we live in, but I'm finding that for me and for people that I follow and listen to, it's becoming increasingly harder to set really long-term goals, like 5 to 10 year goals. Most people I look up to and respect, they only think as far ahead as like 3 to 6 months and a year max. And if it's year goals, they might only have a few. And typically that's due to, most of them are entrepreneurs, and typically that's due to just things change so fast. I mean, for instance, I'm entering into a situation right now, or my life is changing in the next couple my very drastically in a couple of key ways. And 30 days ago, I had no clue that, it would be my life would be taking this turn, or that I had this opportunity, and I don't know if
that's interesting that you mentioned that, because like I feel like it could be partly due to just like the age where like, we're all about that instant gratification. You're like, push a button, get a ride, or like having those, reasons to celebrate daily or weekly, I think helps with morale and helps with being able to move forward, especially as you said, being in a startup environment or an entrepreneurial environment where there's a lot of uncertainty, and being able to kind of, look at the next 2 or 3 steps instead of, almost BSing yourself and being like, oh, here's my 5-year financial plan, or,
Right.
stuff like that. So I definitely think that's an interesting point that you just mentioned.
Now, you mentioned instant gratification, and I know we said this was the lightning round, but I'm going off of a tangent here. But I think it's interesting because you mentioned instant gratification, and I don't know, like growing up, I always viewed that as, and was told that was kind of a negative thing, like be patient, like good things take time and all this stuff. But the reality is we live in a world today where everything is instant. I don't know if it's so much about if it's like a bad thing that you should try to avoid, as it is just that's the way the world works. I mean, the nature of your business, getting food faster, Uber, you can order rides and food and all these things with like the touch of a button. Google anything you want to know, anything you want to learn, you can pick up in a 10-minute YouTube video and a quick Google search. And I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that's kind of the way that a lot of us have started to expect things. Before, people were content with, waiting up to 40 minutes for a cab, and maybe he's across the street, or you might not even find the right person. But everyone's just kind of expecting that now, and it definitely makes building a business around those needs a little bit harder, because there's such a higher bar and higher level of standards that you need to meet, because good is not just good enough anymore. You need to have great service to actually be able to elicit an emotional response from your customers that is memorable for them and that will have them coming back to you, or else they'll just be like, oh, that was meh, I'll try something else, because there's so many other options out there now.
Yeah, and I guess the new norm is what I think it is. It's the new norm. So Anthony, what would you say is a personal habit that contributes to the success you've achieved so far?
A personal habit, I'd say, I guess just something about me and a lot of people that I know who have found great success in their companies or whatever their dreams and wishes are, is just being very optimistic. A lot of times things will not be okay, or shit will definitely be very, very close to hitting the fan. But, I need to be one to communicate with my company and with the people that are helping me build this dream, that like, hey, like we're so close to the next breakthrough. We're so close to the next milestone. I think sometimes being overly optimistic and not ignoring the consequences, but definitely like overlooking them or not giving them too much thought has helped me push forward and grow as fast as I have, because, going from just one school to 15 schools within a year, you can be like, what, you haven't even known how to scale yet, or like, what if things go wrong, or what if this goes wrong? But, not thinking about that and just kind of hitting the gas pedal and be like, yo, so many people want our service, let's give it to them. This is what the people need. And being able to have that mentality has definitely helped us and be able to grow fast and be confident at that.
Yeah. Do you read?
I'd say I would like to read more than I do. Right now, being so busy, it's mostly kind of reading the news and a few kind of those longer form blog posts or podcasts by the people that I respect and listen to.
Well, what's a book, or if not a book, what's maybe a blog or some sort of resource that you really appreciate that's brought you a lot of value that you'd recommend?
I'd say for people interested in venture capital, like I am, even as on the founder side, there's a podcast called the 20-Minute VC that I really like. It's, doesn't take up too much of your day, definitely gets a lot of very prominent founders, investors, and, big voices in the industry to kind of share their thoughts and their experiences and how they got to the point that they are. And I think that as someone very young or someone looking to break into that industry, it's definitely very valuable and interesting to kind of listen to their experiences like that.
What's an internet resource, kind of like Evernote, that you'd recommend?
I'd say probably my biggest kind of, I guess, like internet tool that I use is Polymail. It's just an email app that I use that helps me, schedule my posts, helps me know when people are reading things, or especially when I'm sending out so many emails every day, when to follow up on these conversations, because it's very easy for my message to be buried in a pile of hundreds. So I think following up is really, really key when you want to get what you want. And I think this tool has been pretty awesome for me to be able to stay on top of everything like that.
Polymail, like Poly mail. Is this like, will it, like I know some services like that, they'll notify you when the person you've sent it to has opened it, kind of that sort of thing? Or
yeah, like when they've opened it, if you're grinding away late at night, you can send it to be scheduled in the morning, so it's kind of up more on the top of their inbox. And you can send if this person hasn't opened it or replied within 3 days, bounce that email back to me so I can follow up.
Oh, sweet.
And it does things like send calendar invites, all sorts of things that kind of help you stay on top of your game and being the most kind of proactive person you can be.
Yeah, I like it. So our last two questions here, Anthony, what parting advice would you have for any of our listeners who are probably where you are, a few years back, who are thinking of dropping out, but they haven't made that step yet?
I'd say if you're in college, definitely make sure you've tested this product enough. There's starting your own business or idea is very, very trendy these days, and a lot of people, I think, drop out for the sake of saying they dropped out, just to kind of ride that train. And I think you have to know that you're in it for the right reasons. And don't get me wrong, there's a ton that you can accomplish while still being in school and working on a business. And I think being able to kind of manage your time like that and be able to do both almost full time is a good indicator of whether you can handle dropping out. Because if you want to pursue something full time and take that opportunity cost, you better be putting in the energy and the hours a week that's kind of required and kind of deserves your attention.
Yeah. Now, on the flip side, what parting advice would you have for any of our listeners who have already dropped out and they're already on that entrepreneurial journey?
I'd say, first of all, congratulations. It's a pretty big personal decision, and definitely one that some people may regret some days. I'd say in terms of dropping out, don't make it a solo endeavor. Definitely find a support group, and definitely find family and friends and time for yourself, because a lot of times it is hard, and a lot of times going through the problems, especially of your own business, it's very easy to, I'd say, relate the problems of your own company and kind of have that adversely affect your own mood. The success of your company is not the success of you as a person. And I think the more you surround yourself with people who understand that or who are in similar situations, the better you can kind of handle that and handle those kind of emotional ups and downs.
What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
I'd say the best way to get in touch with me is on Twitter. I'm usually pretty responsive if anyone reaches out directly. And my Twitter handle is AnthonyJZ17.
Awesome. Well, Successful Dropouts, you've been hanging out with Anthony and Kylan today, learning what it takes to drop out, grind, and succeed. For everything we talked about today, head over to successfuldropout.com and type Anthony into the search bar, and the show notes will pop right up. And as always, stay hungry, stay foolish. For more information about how to drop out, grind, and succeed, go to successfuldropout.com. I also love questions. If you have a question about anything we talked about today, I want to hear from you. Go to successfuldropout.com and click the Ask Me a Question link at the top of the page. Successful Dropouts, if you could go to iTunes and leave a positive rating and review, it would help this show out a lot. I know you're busy, I know you got a lot going on, but if you do that, it helps this podcast rank, it helps other people listen to it and gain value just like you have been. Thank you so much in advance.